All right, today's lesson is titled Calvary Was Forbidden. And this is for my New Testament is Fake series. I just came across this verse here, or two verses I want to read, from Exodus chapter 8, verse 25 and 26, that exposes Calvary. I've talked about how Calvary is not kosher in the past. I want to show it again. That the Romans dealt with Calvary. They were the ones who actually offered up the sacrifice because they took the place of the high priest. They were the ones who inflicted wounds on the body of Jesus, the Lamb of Calvary. So they slaughtered the Lamb on Calvary. They are heathen. They are not Israelites, and they are certainly not high priests. And the high priest, according to Levitical law, should cleanse himself first and offer sacrifice for himself first and so on. They didn't do any of these stuff. They are not Levitically clean by the ritual standards of ancient Israel. So they should not have anything to do with the sacrifice. So Calvary is forbidden because the Romans offered up the sacrifice on Calvary. And I said a long time ago in that other recording, Calvary was not kosher, that if the Israelites back in the Torah days were doing the sacrifice, and some Roman soldier or someone from some other land would come, and although there were no Romans at that time, way back then, but if they saw someone from another land coming, like a Roman soldier, trying to offer the sacrifice of one of their lambs, or so to the Most High on a high holiday, they would have stoned that person because the Israelites would not have put up with that. And here it is now. I didn't consider this verse at the time, but I found it today. Here what it says in Exodus chapter 8, verse 25 and 26. Remember now, Moses went back to Egypt and he was talking to the Pharaoh saying, "Let my people go. We want to go sacrifice," and he wouldn't let him go. But now Pharaoh, trying to deal with the situation some more, is telling them to go and sacrifice in the land. So basically, don't leave. Stay right here in Egypt and do it. So it says, "And Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron and said, 'Go ye, sacrifice to your God in the land.' And Moses said, 'It is not meet so to do, for we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and they will not stone us?'" You see what I'm saying? Why I say Calvary was forbidden, which means it still doesn't have any meaning today before the eyes of the Most High. Because even Moses is telling you that even to sacrifice right there would be an abomination. Even in the eyes of the Egyptian. The Egyptians themselves would stone them, would be saying, like, "What? This is one of our sacrifices. What are you doing?" The Egyptians would stone them. And so you see, I'm digging into the sacrificial system already, and it's looking now like this whole Israel stuff came out of Egypt. And when I listen to some of the works of Dr. Yosef Ben Yochanan, and he's saying Israel came out of Egypt. And before I heard him say that, because I never listened to his stuff all these years, I could say to myself, this came out of Egypt. When you hear about all these 42 negative confessions and the laws and so on, Israelites came out of Egypt. And they got Egyptian practices. It was so in them that the Most High was telling them, don't do as the Egyptians, out of whose land you came. He says, don't do it. But they're coming out with the practices and the lifestyles and the teachings of the Egyptians. And the Egyptians were doing sacrifices. So if Israel is coming out as a nation doing sacrifices, but now it's saying that Moses himself is saying, won't they stone us? And he's saying it is an abomination of the Egyptians to do this kind of sacrificing right here. So basically, if the sacrifice is not done in an Israelite kind of way, fully and completely, it is an abomination, and even the Egyptians will stone us for trying to do it right here. Because they're saying you're infringing on our sacrificial system and in our land as well. It is not possible, not acceptable, I should say, for you to do this right here. So, the sacrifice of Calvary has to be forbidden for the Romans of another nation of people to be offering up an Israelite sacrifice. The Lamb of Calvary, that should only be handled by the Israelites. Calvary is forbidden. Moses said, even the Egyptians will stone us. So even the Egyptians had a standard for their own sacrifices that you just don't mess with. But the set apart people of the Most High, where Amos 3 verse 2 says, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. So the Most High is not only that the Romans didn't know him by not knowing his Torah, the Most High didn't know them either, because he said, you only have I known. And they're going to offer this sacrifice and it would be all right? No, Calvary was forbidden.